A very warm welcome to the third session of the productive mechanism. I hope all of you are doing amazing. I'm your master teacher Ankana for social sciences at Vedantu, and let's get started with the third session. So what are we going to talk about today? So guys, today we'll be discussing about division of labor, types and advantages of division of labor, efficiency of labor, reasons for low efficiency of Indian laborers, then capital, its meaning and characteristics, and in the end we'll be having 1 mark very important question from the chapter as your homework. So stay tuned because that's the most interesting part of the session, right? I mean, not that other parts are not, but yeah. So guys, if you remember when we started, we first of all in the very first session understood what do we mean by productive mechanism. How does it mean, how does it talk about production and all those things, the whole system, what are the factors which are involved, and then we moved on and spoke about another two factors, which was basically land and labor. We got introduced to its meaning, to its characteristics and all those things. Now today we are going to dwell more into understanding of labor. Okay, so we have understood what labor is, what is its meaning, what are its characteristics. Today we are going to understand how division of labor is done and why is it done. Okay guys, chalo. So now what do I mean by division? So division obviously means dividing things, right? Putting, parting up with things. I mean, like something which is a whole has been divided into parts between different people. So the division of labor, the work is also divided between people based on their specialization. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this, or what people mean by this, is that people get to do the job, the work which they are most suited for, what they can do the best, what they're most skilled or knowledge, have the most knowledge about, they are assigned with that work. Okay, if you look at the Penguin Dictionary of Economics definition given there, it says the specialization of worker in particular parts of a production process is called a division of labor, which means if I am very good at let's say stitching, then in a garment factory I will be assigned the work of stitching instead of maybe designing. Okay, that is what is meant by types of division of labor. Now there are various types, there are various bases on which the division of labor is done. What are these types? So it's called simple, complex, horizontal and vertical, and international and national. Let's move forward and understand what these different types are. So let's start with the very first one, which is simple or product based division of labor. Now what do we mean by this? So bacha, it completely means what kind of product is being designed. Whoever specializes in the designing or the production of that particular thing, that particular product, will be assigned that work. For example, if I'm a good carpenter, I will be only working in producing furniture. If somebody is good at farming, he will be into farming, right? So production of a particular commodity, of a particular stuff or particular thing or service, based on how specialized you are in that. Based on that, we do the division. Now, the second one is complex or process based division of labor. So what was the first one? First one depended upon what kind of product is being formed. Okay, it was based on that, and that's why it's called a simple one. Second one is determined on the basis of the process. Now with the production of any object, any good, any commodity, it goes in stages, correct? It has to undergo an entire process. The production in itself is could be of multi steps. Now all these steps makes this process a little complex, and that's why we are calling this a complex division of labor. So now according to the modern economy, what happens, as I was telling you, there are multiple steps involved, right? There are several processes involved in production of anything. So now what we do, that all this process is divided in small chunks, small steps. For example, production of a garment. It starts right from the step of procuring the raw materials, then segregating in different textiles, the material of the clothes, then the different designs, then the different printing patterns, then stitching, then the designing and stitching come together, fitting, all of that. Okay, then transportation, then selling. The entire production has been divided into multiple processes, multiple steps. So what we do is that we assign people to work, or one person or a whole group of people to work on each step. Okay, which means every person will be taking up one step of the job of the entire process. Let's say if it's a 5-step thing, then step 1 will be done by one particular person or a whole group of people. Step 2 will be done by another group of people. It's not like the same person is performing step 1 and then the same person comes and performs step 3. In few cases it might happen, but in general every person is assigned for each step respectively, and that is what we mean by complex division of labor. Now this complex division of labor further is divided into two types, called which we call complete process of division or incomplete process of division. Now what do we mean by this? Now, as I told you, bacha, that the entire process of production in these days especially comes in multiple steps. It's a whole set of steps that goes on together. It's a whole multilateral process, right? So now what happens that sometimes there are two kinds of productions that happens. One is that at every step, whatever good that is being produced by each of those groups is, complete in itself. It can individually also go out, but there is also one process where simultaneously different goods are being produced, but they are incomplete without each other. They have to in the end be assembled together. For example, if I talk about textile industries, okay, suppose there are multiple groups where one group is doing the spinning, the other one is doing the weaving, the third one is doing the sizing, someone is doing the bleaching. All of these, whatever we produce out of it, those goods can also go. Maybe it will be processed ahead, but even if it is not, those goods individually can also go out and be considered to be finally produced. But if in an industry, let's say of automobile or let's say of a computer, what will happen? Different parts are being designed. Let's say one place the hardware is being made ready, in one place what all different chips and all those needs to be put on is being ready. Or for example, automobile, in one place the tire is getting ready, one place the body is getting ready, in one place the engine is getting ready. So all the parts of the automobile is getting ready together simultaneously. But if all those products are ready by the different teams, it's not a whole, right? It needs to be combined together in the end. So this is known as complete or incomplete process of complex division of labor. Based on this also the two division is done, which means in one place the different groups who are working together are actually coming up with complete products. However, in the second case, the product that they're producing is not really complete in nature, needs to be assembled. There's one more step left to it. Okay? The next category, the third one, is horizontal division of labor. Now, as the name suggests, it says horizontal, right? Which means the whole process of production is divided into parts where everyone is working simultaneously. Like I gave you the example of automobile. Everyone is working on one or the other part of the automobile. However, in vertical division of labor, how it happens is you can think of it as a hierarchy, which means that once the step 1 is completed, only then step 2 can happen. It's not exclusive from each other, it's inclusive. Which means, for example, if cotton textile I take for instance, or silk textile. So in such industries, what will happen? Let's say I'm taking example of silk. So first the cocoon will be taken, then the thread will be made out, then the thread will be yarn, weaving, spinning, whatever needs to be done will be done. Then the cloth will be made. Then from that cloth, whatever material, whatever dress needs to be designed, that will be designed. Then the sizing will be done, which means step 1. The completion of step 1 becomes a necessity for the completion of step 2, which again becomes a necessity for completion of step 3, which means only once you're done with the first process, you can move on to the second process. That becomes vertical division of labor. However, horizontal division of labor is all the steps are exclusive or, among themselves. It doesn't depend on the other teams. Okay? That is what we mean by this. Now let's talk about international division of labor. What do we mean by international division of labor? So by international division of labor, bacha, we mean so every country is going to produce a lot of things for its own consumption as well as for exportation. But they do not take the responsibility of producing each and everything that is possible, that is required for the consumption by their citizens in their hands. They do not take the responsibility of all of it. They only make sure to produce what they can do in an efficient way, in an economical way, correct? For example, there are countries around the world who cannot produce coffee because the land is not favorable for it. Just in case, even if they try and do it, it will not help. Okay, because the land is not going to support, the climate conditions are not going to support. So all of these things will destroy the, or not let the harvest be very productive. Hence, what happens? The division is done on the basis of international, you can say, capability or capacity that they have, which means India has the capacity or the resources to produce spices, which a lot of other countries don't. So they don't even try and do it. It's a labor division that is done, that is understood that India will do this and will export all these things for us, which they will import. Okay, then the next is division of labor within the country. Same concept applied, but the geographical area is changing now. Now in the country itself, you do not produce everything in every part, right? For example, production of coconut oil is done more in the southern part of the country. Why? Because there is coastal region, it's supportive, it's more supportive for the coconut trees to be there, right? It is more, I mean, like it enhances its growing conditions. That's why coconut is produced more in the southern India than in the mountains. So if we try to produce coconuts in mountains, doesn't make sense. Similarly, the textile industries are more established in Mumbai. Jute industries are established in Bengal. So because of their climatic, weather, geographical, economical, market conditions, labor, all those favorable aspects which require for a healthy, good production is established there. So that production is done over there itself. Okay, so that is what we mean by division of labor on a national level. Now we're going to talk about advantages of division of labor. Why do we do it? I mean, like, of course, if you're doing it, it must be helping us out, correct, guys? So why do we do it? But before that, let me quickly take a minute and talk about the problems that you guys have been facing. So we know that this has always been a struggle for you, how to discuss the doubts, where to discuss the doubts, where do you get the notes from, tests, assignments, competitive exams, choice of schedule, choice of language. So I've already been discussing this, all of this in detail with you, like what am I exactly trying to say when I mentioned these points. And I also told you that we have come up with the solution for all of these problems that you had, correct? That is Vedantu Pro. So we have solved all of these problems that you have along with few bonuses. You get access to all the live classes, unlimited live classes with micro and crash courses, with your performance reports and personalized attention. I think that's the most important part. Don't you think so? Like one-on-one attention, right? Okay. So for this, what you need to do, you just need to go on the link, which I will show you within a minute, and select which, select your grade, follow the process over there, select your grade, select your board. You can check out all the details that's there if you need more information. And then you just have to go and click on get subscription, and then you get 3 options: 1 month, 3 months and 6 months. You can select which one do you want, how long do you want to be a part of the Vedantu family, how long do you want to be a part of Vedantu Pro. Remember guys, the bigger package you take, the bigger discount you will have, the better advantages you will have, because you get to stay with the longest period of time with us, and of course you get the most discount as well. Okay bacha? Okay. So how can you do this? You just have to go on this link vdnt.in/ytpro and apply the code AEKPRO. Guys, remember, if you do not apply the code, you will not get the discount. Okay? Yeah. So coming back to the advantages of division of labor. Why do we need it? Why do we do it? So right man to right job, that's very, very important. Whoever is suitable for that job goes to that job. It's not like if I'm not skilled for this job, I'm being forced to do it and I end up not performing well. So whoever deserves to be wherever gets that job. That's the main idea of division of labor. Then of course it increases the efficiency of labor. Why? Because if I keep doing this work that is assigned to me, if I keep teaching on and on, obviously I'm going to practice it more and more. I'm going to read more and more, and my knowledge is going to increase more and more. Hence my efficiency will increase, my productivity will increase. That's the same thing that's happening with the laborers who keep on performing the same task continuously. Then of course saving time and tools. What do we mean by that? Now if a person is well practiced in something, naturally he will consume less time to produce. That's one. Second, tools are also useless. What do we mean by this now? Now, each and every person is not doing the whole task right from scratch till the end, which means the tools that is required to perform the entire process of production is not required by everyone. If you are doing the spinning part, I will only give you the tools that you need for that. If I am doing the stitching part, I will only take the tools that I need for that. Let's say if the division of labor is not done, then all the tools will be required by everyone, and everyone might not even be using it in the most optimum level, right? Okay, then of course production of superior goods. I'm sorry, the point has been repeated, but production of superior goods. Now, if we use this person who is well skilled in that particular job, who has the most knowledge of it, who keeps on doing that job on and is practicing more and more, naturally the kind of production, the kind of output that that person will give will be of a very good quality. So quality and quantity will also matter, which will be enhanced if the same person, if one particular person does it over there. Because also what happens, guys, if I'm a new person and I've been shifted to do a work which I'm not familiar with, I will take more time to learn. Hence that becomes more time consuming. What I will produce will obviously not be of that good quality. So all of these things gets resolved. Then invention. Now how does invention happen? Now, as I was telling you, if I'm a newbie, I won't be able to think of new ideas all the time. But if I'm already working over there and I've seen like, okay, this is working fine, maybe I can experiment it like this. And I will introduce a new step which will lead to altogether new invention. Right? Then less cost production. Of course, the cost that will go into it will be less. It will increase in mobility of the labor. Cooperation among workers will also be there, because everyone, now nobody is interfering in anybody else's business, correct? They have their own set of work to take care of. There will be no friction, and that will increase the cooperation among people, because everyone would be just focused on finishing their task. And then all of these gives an advantage to the society. ठीक है बच्चों? Okay. Now, efficiency of division of labor. Now, how efficiently do the workers work because of this division of labor? So, what do we exactly mean by this? What we mean is how much productive capacity each worker has, which means how much work can one worker produce in a given period of time. Somewhat, if you remember, we have discussed this in land also, right? The production per hectare of land. So basically, if I say in one day, a person can design 10 of these goods. So that is his efficiency. At the same time, there would be someone who would be able to design 20, and at the same time, there would be someone who would only be able to design 5. Right? But they're taking the same amount of time. So that is what determines their efficiency, their productivity. And that is what we mean by it. Now, what are the aspects of labor? Now, what are the aspects of, based on which we determine the productivity of a labor? So, it's the quantity, the quality, and the time. So, let's say if I'm saying that this person has produced 10 of these goods in one day. It will also matter what quality of good and what quantity of good. So 10 goods is the 10 number of things is the quantity. If the quality is not good, then the efficiency will go down. If it is something which will break the next day, then it doesn't matter even if he has produced 100, it's useless for me. And let's say if he's given a very good quality and a good number also, but taken a lot of time, then his efficiency has gone down. Which means it's a mixture of all these three: quantity, quality, and time. In short, we can say the best product given in most number in the least amount of time is the best efficient, can be said to be the most efficient work of production. Okay, then what are the reasons of low efficiency of labor, especially in India? Now we are focusing most in India. Why are we saying that? Why do we think that the efficiency is less of the laborers over here? So, Bacha, this happens because of multiple reasons. One, especially in India, is the weather. It's a very hot climate. India is a tropical or subtropical, region. Few is more closer to the tropical part, few is subtropical part, as a result of which it's very hot in here, and that leads to exertion of people getting losing on their energy, getting exhausted very easily. So that's one very important reason. Second, People work for money. It is a great motivation. It is a huge factor of motivation and dedication by people. But the people, the laborers over here in India are paid very, very low wages, as a result of which, be it for, whatever kind of work that they're doing, be it for physical work or mental work, they don't feel that they are fit, or they don't feel motivated enough. Then of course, an incompatible environment, incongeniable environment, which means the environment is very, very unhealthy, very unhygienic. The good working conditions are not given to them, be it in terms of hygiene or also in terms of mental stability. It's not given to them. No canteen, no recreation and relaxation facilities has been considered for people. Leave alone a facility, not even some time for proper, break is being given to the laborers in India. Then of course, poor technology. We use all old machines, all outdated things, which increases the burden on the laborers. Then the migratory character. So people come from different regions in order to get work into cities, and that leads to, minimum agriculture activities only. So because of this culture, there are so many people and the kind of work is very less or low, and as a result of this, we see a problem in efficiency of people. They are not trained, they are not skilled. As I told you, education and training is something that is not received by them. Now we assign a person to, let's say, work on a machine, but that person has never worked on a machine, so he does not has the skill, he does not has the knowledge, he's not been trained, he's not been educated properly, or for that matter in any other kind of education or training. So because we do not upskill them, the kind of efficiency, the kind of production that they do, the kind of work, the output that they give is not good enough also. So that is it with labor. Now we're going to move to capital. So guys, if you remember, what do we mean by capital? Capital is all those man-made things which are already produced, which are pre-produced in order to help us ahead further in production. Example, tools, instruments, equipments, machines, trucks, factories, all of these things, right? So these are, if I say a definition given by one of the economists, is capital is the produced means of production. Right? So it is a mean which is used in production but is already produced itself. So if you look in the field of that, it was output of some production process. Now what are its characteristics? What are its features? Number one, it has to be man-made. It has to be in any capacity created by human. It cannot be created by nature. Now what do I mean by this? Bacha, if I say that it is, let's say wood, and I say wood was there in the forest, but the man cut it and brought it for me. But no, it is still a natural resource. And do you remember which factor determines that? Which is the factor under which we count everything that the nature has gifted us? Make sure you put it in the put your answer in the comment box. I'll go and check after this session. So the capital has to be man-made. It has to be created by the human. It cannot be simply taken by nature. Okay. Then of course it has to be durable, which means it has to have some durability. It has to have some long-lasting period to it. If a capital is getting destroyed, let's say in 5 days, in 10 days, then it's not a capital for me. It will not qualify as it. The duration of that should at least be a year or few years, and few cases it even goes up to few decades. For example, if I spend on a machine, that machine cannot break within few days. It has to last for few years or at least for 10 years. Or up to 10 years or more than that, right? Then it has to be a passive factor, bacha, which is very, very important, which means that all these things cannot work on their own. They need somebody to work on them. If they're producing themselves, then it does not qualify as a capital. For example, if I'm taking a machine, the machine also needs a person to operate. It may be automated completely, but it has to be started and stopped by some human being. That is the intervention of a third person, which makes it passive. Then a mobile factor, which means it should be movable, transferable. It doesn't mean that it is fixed here and has to be fixed here. If the need be, it can be moved from one place to the other place. Then supply of capital is elastic. If you remember, land and labor were inelastic, which means they were fixed. The supply was constrained. We cannot increase land, we cannot increase labor. What is available is available. But with capital, that is not the limitation. It can always be expanded. The supply can always be increased. Then it is a subject to depreciation. which means although it is an asset, the value of this asset will keep decreasing. That's the nature of a capital. If you spend in a machine and if you go and try sell it after 5 years, you will never get the same value. Leave alone selling it at a profit, the value will only decrease, and that's the nature characteristic of a capital. And then of course, result of past savings. So bacha, it can always be produced or increased in stock. You can always increase the stock of your capital, but it will only come at a cost of some money, at a cost of your investment, at a cost of your savings. And that is why we also call it outcome of savings. So it's not income of savings, it's outcome of saving. Although you get a machine, you get a capital in return of the money that you're spending, but you're actually letting the money go in order to attain this, and that's why it is result of past saving. And with this we are done with today's session. Guys, if you have any doubts, any questions, make sure you put your doubts in the comment box so that I'm able to pick it up for the doubt and the mentee session. Now let's quickly have a look at the homework question for today. Specialization of work indicates efficiency of labor, division of labor, passive factor of production, or none of these. Now if this video helped you, make sure that you hit the like button. If you have not subscribed the channel, guys, do subscribe the channel, because we'll be very soon coming up with the next part of this chapter, next session based on this chapter, and I will see you then. So that you get the notification at the earliest, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button as well. Do tell me in the comment section, how did you like the video? Don't forget to post your answer in the comment section, not just in the live chat, so that your name can appear in the leaderboard. And I will see you guys in the next session. Till then, stay home, stay safe guys. Bye bye, take care, have a great day ahead.